Hey everyone! Today, as you probably read from the title, I'm going to be explaining why I believe Winston really loved Julia in 1984. Now, before I get started, I'm just going to quickly, clarify something before you all go, "Whoa, what are you talking about? You're definitely wrong, blah blah blah." I just want to say that I understand other people's viewpoints and I just want to get my own point across. So, let's begin. Also, sorry if you can hear other sounds because my fan's on, because it's like a heat wave at the minute, so whatever. If it's loud, I'm sorry. I've seen many people argue that Winston never truly loved Julia, and that he simply desired her, used her as a form of rebellion, and retrieved her because he never genuinely cared. While I understand why people reach that conclusion, I respectfully disagree. In my opinion, Orwell's novel is far more tragic than that. If Winston never loved Julia, then the ending loses much of its emotional weight. Throughout the novel, Winston lives in a society designed to destroy every genuine human connection. The party doesn't just control actions, it controls thoughts, emotions, memories, and even language itself. In a world where trust is almost impossible, Winston chooses to trust Julia. That decision alone is incredibly meaningful. I understand their relationship isn't perfect. Winston is flawed, Julia's flawed, they don't know everything about each other, much like people in real life, and they don't agree on everything, but real love doesn't require perfection. What matters is that they choose each other despite the danger they put themselves in. When they meet in the countryside, rent the room above Mr. Charrington's shop, and spend time together doing ordinary things, those moments aren't simply about physical attraction. They laugh, they talk, they share memories, they create a small world that belongs to only them. A world free of the party, even if only temporary. Julia gives Winston hope. Before meeting her, Winston is isolated, frightened, and emotionally numb. After meeting her, he begins to imagine a future worth living for. He notices beauty again, he smiles, and he becomes more human. To me, that is evidence of genuine love and care. I've seen people argue that Winston's betrayal proved he never loved Julia. I disagree with that interpretation as well. The party's entire purpose is to break people completely. It isn't satisfied with making citizens obey, it wants to destroy their ability to love anyone more than Big Brother. The Ministry of Love isn't designed to punish people, it's designed to erase who they are. When Winston betrays Julia, he isn't making a calm, rational decision because he simply doesn't care about her. He has been subjected to relentless physiological and physical torture. I can't speak, guys. Specifically intended to force him to betray the person he loves the most. And to me, that's exactly why the betrayal is so horrifying. If Winston never loved Julia, the party doesn't actually destroy anything meaningful. It merely exposes that there were never any real bond between them. But Orwell spends the novel showing us that there was something real. The tragedy isn't that Winston's secretly selfish all along. The tragedy is that even genuine love can be destroyed by a regime that has absolute control over the human mind. Some readers also point to Winston's flaws in the early novel as proof that he never loved Julia. I think this misunderstands Orwell's intentions. Winston isn't written as a hero. He's fearful, bitter, prejudiced at times, and often confused. Orwell deliberately makes him an ordinary, deeply flawed man living under unimaginable oppression. Being flawed doesn't make someone incapable of loving another person. If anything, Winston's flaws make his moments of tenderness with Julia feel even more genuine. Do I think Winston and Julia had a perfect relationship? No. Do I think Winston always understood Julia completely? Of course not. The people in real life don't understand each other completely. But I do believe they genuinely loved each other in the only way they knew how within a society specifically designed to prevent love from existing. That's part of why the ending hurts so much. The party doesn't simply separate two lovers, it succeeds in destroying the last part of Winston that remained truly human. To me, that's the entire point of 1984. If Winston never loved Julia in the first place, then Orwell's ending becomes a story about exposing a lie. If Winston did love Julia, the ending becomes a story about destroying one of the last beautiful things left in a broken world. And I believe the second interpretation is what makes the novel unforgettable. With all that being said, we get the question, was Winston making a free choice? I don't think Orwell intended us to believe he was. Before Winston is arrested, he repeatedly says and believes that there is one thing the party cannot control, what he truly feels inside. He and Julia even discuss this. They know they might be forced to confess or say anything under torture, but they believe that as long as they still love each other inwardly, the party hasn't really won. The party hears this, and its response is essentially, "We'll prove you wrong." The goal of Ministry of Love isn't to make Winston obey. If obedience were enough, they could imprison him or execute him. Instead, they spend months dismantling his identity. Think about what happens to Winston. He is deprived of sleep, beaten repeatedly, isolated from all human comfort, manipulated physiologically, made to doubt his own memories, forced to accept contradictions, and eventually confronted with the one thing he fears above all else. This is an ordinary interrogation. This is a cinematic attempt to rewrite a person's mind. Orwell isn't asking, how brave is Winston? He's asking, what happens when government gains power to reshape human consciousness itself? This is why I don't see Winston's portrayal as revealing his true self. Imagine someone suffering from severe brain injury, dementia, or even being drugged into saying something they wouldn't normally say. We genuinely don't conclude, well, that's who they really were. We recognise that their mind has been altered. The party is trying to achieve that same effect, not through illness, but through torture and physiological conditioning. Sorry, I can't speak. By the time Winston reaches the final stage, his instincts have become rewritten. There's another detail I think most people overlook. When Winston is finally confronted with his greatest fear, he doesn't calmly say, "I don't love Julia anymore." Instead, his entire survival instinct overwhelms everything else. His mind screams for the terror to happen to someone else. That's not the same as thoughtfully choosing to abandon Julia. It's the collapse of a person under unimaginable pressure. Then look at the ending. When Winston later meets Julia, something has changed. People sometimes point this as a proof he never loved her. I see it differently. The ending doesn't read like someone who was pretending all along. It reads like someone who has rather been emptied out. He's emotionally numb, his independent thoughts are gone, his memories have been rewritten. His love has disappeared, not because it was fake, but because the party succeeded destroying it. That's an important difference. The character who oversees Winston's torture, O'Brien, actually explains the party's philosophy. They don't want martyrs. They don't want people who secretly resist. They want people who genuinely love Big Brother. Only then are they allowed to die. That tells us everything. If Winston's love for Julia had already been false, there had been nothing for the party to change. The months of torture would be unnecessary. The party insists on changing his inner reality because that is its victory. So when people say, Winston betrayed Julia because he wanted to, or because he was a bad person, I think that misses Orwell's point. A free choice requires freedom. Winston has none. By the time he betrays Julia, the party has systematically stripped away his ability to think, judge, remember, and feel independently. What speaks in the moment is not the same mind that met Julia in the countryside or dreamed of a different life with her. It's the mind the party has spent months constructing. That doesn't erase Winston's responsibility as a character entirely. Literature is often more complicated than that, but it does mean his portrayal occurs under conditions where his autonomy has been initially dismantled. Ironically, the fact that this hurts you as a reader is evidence that Orwell achieved what he set out to do. If you feel like Winston and Julia had something real that was brutally destroyed, then you've experienced the tragedy Orwell was building toward. Whether another reader interprets it differently doesn't make your reading too soft. It reflects a different judgment about what Orwell was trying to show us about love, power, and what happens when a regime seeks control, not just over people's actions, but over their minds. And with that, I would like to say that Winston truly loved Julia. Sure, some of you might want to disagree with me, or you don't understand anything that I'm saying, but if you do understand, then I'm happy you decided to listen, and I'm not saying this to bash people who think the opposite of me, or trying to say that I'm wrong, or something like that, or say that they're wrong. I appreciate everyone's different opinions as a reader, but this is partly the reason why I'm doing it, to share my opinion with other people and try and find people who think the same as me under common ground, stuff like that. So I hope you all enjoyed the video, and see ya!